morning, LinkedIn, and welcome back to my weekly conversation that focuses on AI tools and tactics. Um, Conveniently enough, in the last week, I've actually been able to come up with a name around this, and so without further ado, introducing PromptCraft. Because PromptCraft is largely what we're focusing on, just showing how to do all these different things related to generative AI and prompt engineering so that you can better empower yourself to be more effective using these tools. Uh, Last week, we started focusing on a few different examples for how to apply your generative AI knowledge into an actionable project. And so we did that using Claude, and I just showcased how to create a demo project and some examples using information so that you can then do the same. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different in that instead of kind of building that iteratively, I have a couple examples that I'm just going to go right into. And these examples are going to be a little bit more complicated compared to those that I intend to do in the future as well as what I've done previously. But that in mind, I do think there's a lot of value to showing just what some of the power of this can be. And then once we've completed that, we'll be able to move on to the next part of the conversation that will really talk through the theory of what I was able to accomplish and why. So without further ado, we'll just kind of start diving into everything. And the first example we're looking at here is a workflow I built within HubSpot. Uh, Ultimately, this workflow, it looks crazy complicated, but it really isn't anything special. All it really does is changes a couple custom properties based off of logic that I've set, which is requires a little bit of updating because I made a couple property changes at the end of last week. But for argument's sake, in the conversation we're doing here, that's not a big deal. But for this example, I'm going to assume that I'm building this workflow for a client. And I want to show this client what the workflow looks like, either for documentation purposes or to get their input prior to me pushing it live. And this is something that I can actually do within Miro. And there's a couple quick steps that you can do within really any workflow building tool and Miro that will allow you to visualize what that flow looks like. So using HubSpot as an example, the first thing that you want to do is, export the image. And when I'm downloading the workflow as an image, it's now giving me this overall nice view that's going to show everything about how the workflow works. Going next, I'm going to pop over to Claude. And so you can use any tool that you're using. In this case, again, I prefer Claude for a lot of the work that I'm doing right now, but ChatGPT works well just as equally as Gemini. And so I've now provided the bot right here some context for what I'm looking to do. I've created the workflow in HubSpot. Now I'm going to export it to Miro with the ability to create so I can showcase that. I'm explaining that I'm going to be adding the image to the workflow so it can have it. There's one thing that I haven't included, and that's essentially, actually no, I had included it. I wanted to create a mermaid diagram that I can import into Miro. Now, if you're not sure what a mermaid diagram is, it is the best way to describe it is a quick front-end HTML based viewing of information. And so when I start running this, you'll see that mermaid diagram appear over on the right once it gets the confirmation. So going in here, it's going to start creating our code for the mermaid diagram. So this mermaid diagram is just a quick flowchart that gives you a nice front-end view of what it can use. And again, the nice thing about all of this is that it's leveraged within HTML so that you HTML or Markdown so that you can actually use it in a variety of different contexts. There's an issue with the syntax error, but for what we're doing here today, that's really not a problem. All we need here is the code because that's what we're ultimately going to be taking. The thing that we did want to make sure, though, and why this would actually be valuable, is to make sure that the mermaid diagram that it created for me does in fact align with what I've added over here based off of HubSpot. But we're going to assume that everything looks good for the sake of this exercise. And if it doesn't, for whatever reason, this is a perfect opportunity for you to have a conversation with the bot and explain where there's a discrepancy or where there's an error. And so as you're doing that, you'll actually be able to go back and forth, have that conversation, and refine your diagram to be the way you want it to be. And this could be something that's really good even as an exercise when you're building the workflow, just to sense check yourself and make sure that the logic that you've built in workflow is in fact the logic that you want to have. Because there may be a question that comes up that you hadn't necessarily considered, that in the process of creating the documentation, you may realize, oh, I should probably add that over to the original workflow. And that's a great place for this to start. So again, now that I have this code ready, I'm going to go ahead and I can copy the contents over, and I'm going directly into Miro. Miro has this nice new Create with AI tool. And all I want to do is tell it to go to the diagram par and indicate what I'm looking to do. So I want to get a flowchart based on the following mermaid diagram. So now that I've provided that information, I now just paste that code that I just copied over from Claude and click Generate Diagram. And I wait here for a couple seconds, and before long, I will be able to have my diagram here created, probably in a little bit of a choppier way than I would like, but it tends to still operate. So what I can look at and see here is that it has the workflow built out in the same way that I have it built over here. And granted, there's a few nuances that I would probably need to add to it, just to make sure that all of the text is the way that I want it to be. However, again, if you're building this in such a way and you're using all of the different explanation points and you're really clearly articulating what all of this looks like on the HubSpot side of things, this will be a lot cleaner on the back end side of things. And that's all there is to it for this example. And you can do this with all kinds of things. And so while I use this for HubSpot to create the mermaid diagram, there's also ways where you can distill information from conversations you might be having with a client or a conversation you might be having with your team about how you want a certain flow to work. And you just type that, you express it, your goal is to create the workflow in the tool that you're using, and then you paste the context around that conversation, and you will be that much further along with creating your process flow as you want to see it. The next thing I'm going to look at is just showing you how you can create a simple proposal. And this is from an old sales call from from several weeks ago that wound up not being one that worked for me, but ultimately I got a lot of information off of this call that was able to potentially be translated into a proposal. And really what you're going to do is you pop over into Claude or ChatGPT and you provide it around the context for what you want your proposal to be. So in this case, I have a couple examples that I was just using to showcase what this would look like for this particular project. But in your case, there would likely be a little bit more back and forth as you've built this out a little bit further. And then once that is done, all I need to do is copy over the meeting here and say, copy over all the information I have for the meeting and send it to the bot and let it know what it wants to do. So in this case, I will let it know exactly that and what I'm doing. So attached are the meeting notes and the transcript. Use create proposal. So now now that I've done this, I've given all the information for the meeting notes over here, and there's also now the transcript that I can go ahead and get. And if I just go over into the transcript and copy it over here with a new button, I can just go ahead, I paste it in here, and now I'm asking it to create me a proposal based off of all the context that I predefined or that you've predefined, and paste it in the information from Fathom. And just like that, I now have a proposal and has saved myself I don't know how many hours, and probably will have helped you do the similar kind of a thing. So a couple things to keep in mind when you're doing something like this is that you want to make sure that the tool you're using has all the context about your pricing structure, how you want your proposal formatted, and the various different tonality that you want to be using. Because if you don't have that, you're not going to be getting as effective as an outcome. And that combination is what is going to enable you to really save a whole lot of time. And so those two examples are really just like the core around showing some of the more advanced applications that you can use some of these tools to some of these tools to do. And the key aspect that I wanted to draw upon there is something that I started hitting on last week during the conversation, focusing on the 4 key aspects that you want to have around prompting. And when you're working with prompt engineering, you want to have your purpose, you want to have your context, you want to have any desirable outcomes, as well as any additional information that you might want to have. And those 4 different things have been included in both the examples that were just done. So for going back to the HubSpot workflow one, my purpose is that I want to create a workflow in Miro. The context I'm providing it is 1, it's coming from HubSpot, and 2, it's going to Miro, as well as I provided it an image for what that's going to look like. The output, I told it to do a mermaid diagram, and any steps or requirements that I have is also established within the definition of wanting to have it a mermaid diagram. Similarly, with the proposal example I just showed you, purpose was simple, create the proposal. Context was everything I had around the conversation I had to put that proposal together, but also all the information I have about how I do my pricing structure and how I format my proposals. The requirements is, again, all the information that I would need to have in order to have the proposal output, so additional notes from the meeting, as well as some of the key action items. And then the output I have is the proposal that I'm looking for. And you'll notice that even as I'm saying these things, there's a bit of redundancy between each of these categories. And that's okay, because that redundancy ensures that you're able to very clearly and definitively tell the tool what you want to create. And when you're doing that, you're reinforcing that information with more context and more information that you have. And so bringing all of that full circle together is really, again, re-emphasizing the context, not the context, the concept for how these generative AI tools work. And they're made up of 2 key facets, LMs and LP. And if you're not familiar with these terms, and I know I'm changing gears at this point, because the big importance behind all of this is just kind of showing examples and then providing the theory behind how to apply the knowledge. So like most of these conversations, I'm going to be doing a few different directions around, during each one of my videos, and that is just to try and provide you with as much information and relevancy as possible. So again, shifting back to defining what all these are, is generative AI tools, which are comprised of LLM, or large language models, NLP, or natural language processing. I know I covered this a couple weeks ago, but it bears importance to just reiterate how they work together. And LLM is effectively the internet. Generative AI tools have access to the whole internet and anything that is digital and publicly available at any given time. NLP, or natural language processing, is the ability for it to have a conversation with you, understand human syntax, and determine how to apply that. So together, if you want to think of it in a simpler term, when you're going to Google, NLP is the equivalent of you asking the question at Google. And then LLM is the equivalent of Google doing the search for you. Same concept for using these Gen AI tools. NLP is your conversation experience that you're having with the bot, and the LLM is the actual creation of content or the analyzing of information or the providing of additional resources from across the web based off of all of the information that you've provided to the bot. And that's just extremely powerful. And it's something that I get really excited about all the time. All the time, really, because there's so much to these tools and just so many opportunities that it's really been able to enhance and augment. And that's why I started creating videos like this. And I started working on a new tool that I will be announcing here later this week that is also tied to PromptCraft. But it's going to be something that is a lot more interactive, we'll say, than just kind of watching me talk at a screen for however long. But the important part of this whole conversation and why I'm grateful that you've kind of been able to continue to watch along with me is just the empowerment through practice. And it's something that I've stressed, I think, in every conversation so far. It's something I'm going to continue expressing in every conversation going forward. And practice is going to be what ultimately drives your success with these tools. The more you use it, the better you're going to be able to be with using these tools. And that's the core of it. And there's a lot of power there. And so the last thing I want to do before signing off on a shorter session today is just give you a little bit to think about. And that is to consider whenever you're going forward and you're doing a Google search. And you're doing this probably several times a day when you want to find information. But anytime you're trying to find information, think about how you're phrasing the question and how you're ultimately able to get the answer you're going for. And then try applying that in a language model like ChatGPT or Claude and see what that is able to accomplish for you and see how much quicker you're able to actually get to your end result. And based off of that, maybe you can see how to improve either how you're using your Google searching, or you can start leveraging the AI tool a little bit more based off of what you're looking to accomplish. So that's it for my conversation today. I hope it was valuable and helpful, and I look forward to sharing more information related to prompting here again next week. Enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy your week, and I'll see you soon.